gonna give a super duper quick review on Black Panther, like just a few things about the movie that I really liked. Firstly, I really liked how they showed women in a multifaceted light. So there was the queen, there was the warriors, there was the technician, there was the spy. So women displayed an array of personality characteristics, and I like that. Women were in a real life way, like with strength and grace, like an equal part of it. And there was no bias any which way. Like women weren't extra tough all throughout, and women weren't like super fragile and dainty all throughout. Damsel in distress type deal. It was nothing like that. Not in any light at all. And there wasn't, because it was black women, there was no like extra tough, can't take help, stubborn. None of those type of stereotypes were like super afflicted either. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was a great balance on how like the women in the movie were broadcasted to the world. That was really cool. Another thing I really liked about it was the villain. The villain was my favorite character, Michael B. Jordan. I know it's because he was so easy for Americans to identify with. He was so easy for Black Americans to identify with. What he was fighting for, it was not evil. I mean, of course he was the antagonist of the story, but from my perspective, none of it was like evil. The way in which he was going about it was like extra aggressive, but it wasn't like, nobody in the theater was like hoping he would die or like hoping he would come to like a super terrible demise. It was more like, I hope that he's able to compromise. But at least from my perspective, I was not totally against the villain. And then there's the obvious. I saw some people talking about how like the movie touches on like the clear disconnect between Africans and African Americans. That was really important for them to show and not be afraid to show. I feel like for some reason that's like a sticky conversation. Like Africans or African Americans don't want to admit that there's a disconnect. Like there's clearly a disconnect. Showing that in the movie was important, and it was true. And I really do think, as there was in the movie, there's really a lack of understanding on both sides. What's another thing I liked? I also liked the way Michael B. Jordan looked. He looked very handsome. I thought it was very interesting how protective the people of Wakanda were. How protective the people of Wakanda were of Wakanda. How protective they were of it. And it reminded me so much of talented people, like people who you know that are extremely talented, but don't share their gifts. And it really to me it was kind of like, you know you have so much to offer the world, you know that you could help, but because of fear, you don't. And you think that you're doing something. You think you're really, you think that you're really protecting something, but in all actuality, God only gave you certain things. God only gave you certain gifts and talents to share. So while you think you're coveting and protecting and shielding and keeping, like keepsaking and saving, you're really diminishing the value. Wakanda's value was diminishing. I don't know if anybody really like paid attention, but there was a point in time where Michael B. Jordan was sitting on the throne, and the Get Out guy, I forget what his name was in the movie, but they were like in dialogue, and it had came up that Wakanda won't even really be all that special in a couple more years, like, because the outside world technology is advancing. And so that, to me, it was so relatable to people sitting on potential. It's kind of like you're sitting on gold right now, and you're harboring, and in a few more years, it may not even be relevant or any good to the world. Like it might not even be, what you're saving may not even be worthwhile. And it may not be worthwhile because the true value of your gift only comes with you sharing it. The true value of Wakanda only came with them sharing what they had. And that's how I really look at like human beings, especially those who are sitting on like very important, pertinent gifts and talents that they can share. And once they share, they can really change the lives of so many people. Another part of the film I really, really liked was the ending, of course. I feel like that meant a lot to a lot of African Americans too, when Michael B. Jordan said, you know, bury me in the ocean next to my ancestors, because they understood, you know, death over bondage. And I really broke down on that part. Like, that was really, yeah, that part, really hit me. And it was because, one, I really do have an unwavering love for Black Americans. I have an unwavering love for me, for people like me and for me. And hearing him say that, it really meant a lot, because it was just like, you know, Wakanda's nice, Africa's cool, the motherland and all of this is great, but I'm not gonna neglect who I am and where I came from and what my ancestors had to go through. Like, and just drawing off a personal experience, I went to Africa like 2 years ago, and I went to the club one night. We all went to the club one night, and like this African guy, he had came up to me or whatever. He felt the need to say, so when are you going to get on your slave ship and go back to America? And I was just like, where did that come from? Like, where is this hostility coming from? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, what was the point in that? And I say all that to say, when I was in Africa and when I was on my way to Africa, there was a want to feel like I went home or to feel wanted. And I feel like a lot of Black Americans, if they haven't been to Africa, or if they're planning to go to Africa, it's because you want to go and feel like you went home, or you're going home, or something to that effect. And when I got there and I wasn't greeted with that, it reminded me how unique Black Americans are. Like, it reminded me that we really are, we're different. And so for Michael B. Jordan to say, you know, I want to be buried in the oceans where my ancestors jumped off, that was really important to me. It's just like, we are different. Like, we are all from here, and I really do respect that. Obviously, he came all that way and did all he did. At the same time, though, I need you to respect who I am too, and like what my people went through, what my lineage that broke off had to go through too. So that was a really like, it's a little bit even hard for me to describe what type of emotion I was feeling at that point in time, but it touched me in a way. And that whole piece of it was very well written. Like, even how in the midst of their quarrel, in the midst of the fight, in the midst of his death, you know, the King of Wakanda took him up to the top, like, to let him see the sunset. Like, there was still a sense of, we are still connected though. Like, we are different, but we are still connected. Let me, you know what I mean? Let me take you to see the sunset and even offer you life. Like, he said, we can still save you. And so how that whole thing even panned out was beautiful. So really kudos to like the producers, directors, writers. Like, that was, I appreciated how that went down. I really appreciated how they showed how the King of Wakanda got it. Like, you know, he understood that where Michael B. Jordan was coming from, where the villain was coming from, was from a place of need. It wasn't from a place of, I'm trying to be evil toward y'all just for the sake of it. It was from a place of, I really need to make this happen. Like, I don't have time. I'm not being a villain for the sake of being a villain. I need something to shake for my people. That's why I'm doing this. I really liked how at the end that the king went back to Oakland and bought the neighborhood, and which was another cool display of exercising your financial freedom, like, or exercising your finances in a way that makes sense. And that was heartwarming and a little like heart-wrenching to me at the same time, because I just was like, it had me thinking about how Michael B. Jordan had to go to such extreme lengths. He had to decide that he would commit his life and his death to making things better for his people. And what it resulted with was his old block being bought. The King of Wakanda bought a few apartments on the block. And it's like, he had to aim so high. Like, I gotta go to Wakanda, kill the king, take over all the resources, and overthrow everything. He had to aim for that just to get a couple buildings on his block getting bought. That, like, it was cool, but it like bothered me a little bit, because it had me thinking about just like our history here in the United States, our recent ancestry. Like, I don't even really like to use the term ancestry, because that creates like a nostalgic thing for people. Like, they think things happened so long ago, but I'm talking about 1958. Like, I'm talking about 1955. Like, I'm talking about 65 years ago. Like, we live amongst people who were alive during this time. Like, I'm talking about our ancestors who had to give their lives they had to aim so high just to get simple, basic civil rights. And that's just how it kind of unfolds. And one of my favorite professors of all time, he explained it to me like this one time, like, we're on one side of a wall and liberation is on the other side. And so you may have to spend your life hitting on the wall to try to get through to liberation, and you might die doing that, like just chipping away at the wall. But those small chips in the wall make it easier for the person who's coming in behind you. And eventually everybody will chip away and get to liberation. And it's just like, it's disheartening, but it's like, it gives you a sense of hope at the same time. Yeah, that was it. That's really, that's where Black Panther took me. I really liked it. And outside of me just being like a Marvel fan in general, like, I love superhero movies. I really did like the graphics of it, and I liked the technology of it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was really different. So that was cool. And that's really about it. I didn't have too much more to say. And I hope that you go and see it, and even go see it twice, and be super supportive. And in like a few more days, Ava DuVernay is letting out A Wrinkle in Time. I hope that everyone goes out and go and see and support her too. And Den of Thieves is out. Go support 50 Cent. What else is out? Anything else that's out that you know that Black people spent time, energy, and money on, I hope that you go and support it. That's important to continuously show support. And that's it. Thanks for watching.